So we're looking at this detailed mechanism of how we basically divinely and fitly and cleanly, inspiredly dream or daydream, imagine, visualize, and think, and what goes on in our so-called mind's eye. And then we, think, speak, say, and do, and then how it, by all of that, is sort of creatively emanated by us. And then this thing that they have called the law of attraction works, where we've emanated a certain way, and then this matrix, or the world, the container of creation, sort of renders it or returns it or manifests it a certain way to us based on what we sent out, signal we sent out, we sort of receive. So now I'm thinking about this, and I'm paying attention to what I'm thinking as I'm walking here, and then I just had this thought, and I stop and I realize, wait, why are you thinking that it's going to be that way? Instead, change the way you're thinking. We have to constantly sort of wisely safeguard and guide and command our emanative creative mechanism, a lot of it being what we're thinking and visualizing and sort of dreaming or daydreaming about, and what we're thinking about, because that's actually what we're having go on is our thoughts and what we're visualizing and imagining. It's actually how it's happening, or how it's panning out to us. So like, listen, I was just thinking about what I'm going to do later, and then I had this, I don't know why I had this happen. Why did that even happen? I would like to know why. I was thinking about what I'm going to do later, and then it went through my mind. I saw it in my mind and thought, oh, it's like, wait a minute, that's not even now. That's still in the future, and the future can be changed. It's like, so how we think and visualize and imagine how things are going to be, or sort of what goes on, right? This is actually an ongoing thing that goes on all the time. We got to pay attention to that and guide that to be a good way, and in a good way. In other words, you got to watch what you're thinking, ask yourself, why are you thinking this like this? And really check that mechanism. And this is something to do with the faith mechanism. It's been called what is known as, actually also as faith, where, like I said at the beginning, somehow through our divine inspired dreaming or daydreaming, right? Visualizing, imagining, an imagination mechanism and mind's eye working mechanism. It's running, right? We all know this, right? You're thinking, imagining, visualizing, and then thinking, saying, doing, and it's real. This mechanism, this creative mechanism, an emanative mechanism, is something that has to be safeguarded. It has to be guided properly. This is where it gets interesting now. Because now you start to have discipline of the mind, and you can guide and sort of properly, what do you call this? Properly guide the most important mechanism that sort of is your imagination, visualizing, thinking, speaking, doing, manifesting, and how life actually manifests itself to you. It's actually true. And it's accomplished by sort of almost like doing routine checks of yourself and your thought process and what you're thinking. And it's actually like generating and benefiting from basically practicing discipline of the mind and watching your thoughts and then guiding them. This is similar to somebody who awakens in a dream, okay? And he's awakened in a dream and starts to quote-unquote lucid dream. The same thing can happen in the same, there's proof. Wow, there's proof there. That's so true. There's proof. There's sufficient proof and evidence that what they call lucid dreaming, when you awaken in a dream and you just start dreaming freely, it's really interesting. That thing is actually, it can go on during the real lifetime, the daytime, real awakened day state of life too. So in other words, if I can get a grip on my thoughts right now, I've got a handle on them, I'm focused here and now, right? You have to be very sharply focused and present right now, right? Watchful, be watchful right now. So you're watching your thoughts yourself, you can guide this process now. And there's routine checks that enable you to increasingly guide this process where this just happened. That's why I just started making this vlog, because I'm just thinking something and I realize, hey, that is not, it's not true actually. It doesn't have to be, and something else can be. It can be better. So I had sort of like a pessimistic sort of a thought for a second about the future, and I stopped. I was like, hey, hold it. Why am I thinking that? For all I know, it could turn out to be totally different. And it will. So if you can sort of grasp and utilize this technique, this is a technique that's like the one that determines how you determine what happens in your life. Because of what you sort of think, dream, and visualize, and then it actually gradually manifests itself based on how you sort of programming the matrix through your mind's eye, thinking, visualizing, speaking, saying, doing, and it actually manifesting. If we could get a grip on this, you'd have a grip on everything. Accompanied by the process that's always important of self-mastery and living wisely too. Because you can visualize things, but they may not be the right things. They might be disastrous or miraculous. You can only discern that with wisdom. So what I'm saying is that it is true. This thing that has been known and classified as the secret, right? That's based on this inscription on some tablets or something from ancient Egypt, where it said something like, as within, so without, as above, so below. And I think, if I'm correct, this was attributed to a man named Hermes Trismegistus. Hope I have the name right. In any case, this idea of that how we think, it actually manifests. In other words, how we think, it's actually true. It is true. Yet there's a mechanism that works gradually, and it starts with what we dream and daydream and think and imagine and visualize. And then, it's what we think about, and then we speak about and talk about and do and sort of work on, and then that's what happens, right? But that's emanation, creative emanation by us as divine human beings, right? And then this thing of the law of attraction happens, where, because that's what we emanated, we program the matrix with that, then it renders to us, and it, quote unquote, the attraction of what we emanated happens to us. So it's like you're sowing and reaping, right? That is the case. That's true. It's entirely true. To know this, everybody knows this. Everybody does this, okay? It's not a mystery. Yet, another thing to be remembered is there are certain levels of maturity that happen with human beings where around the age of about 33, enlightenment happens. And then everything is revealed to you. So then before that, there's gradual revelation. So that's another thing to think about, because I read something the other day that I read in the year 2009 for the first time. And I understood it. And now, for some reason, the other day I pick up this book again. It's a book called The Secret, right? A very interesting book. Beautiful book. And now I looked at it and I realized, oh, I know this. Yet, the perfecting of the process of how our dream or daydream or visualizing and imagining and mind's eye mechanism works, and guiding our thoughts aright and having good ones, having it positively programmed, right? With what's holy, sacred, and pure, right? What's good. That's a work in progress. If you can sort of have discipline of the mind and guide that creative mechanism, you can sort of guide what basically manifests in life. There are different levels to this. The key to accessing that and working with that and gaining more mastery over how you literally visualize your reality and create it gradually, and how it actually gradually manifests, is by actually in stillness and with focus, observing yourself, your thoughts, looking at it from above, reducing the amount of thoughts, and then having certain ones, getting a grip on this imagination and visualizing in mind's eye process. Almost like somebody who awakens in a dream and is now dreaming a good dream because he's awakened. He's looking. He's like, okay, I see what I'm thinking. I can think this, I can think that, right? Think positive, whatever is good, right? Whatever is holy, sacred, and pure, right? Whatever is, beautiful, lovely, what's godly, what's good. You're thinking about that. The more you're doing that, what's happening is that's what you're programming reality with, and it's bringing that then. You're sowing that and you're reaping that, and it's how it actually is. I know this because I do this. Every one of us knows this, whether young or mature. You all know this. Everyone does. It's just that we sort of have this habit of being a little bit passive sometimes, or it's like a second nature, and it's probably like the most important second nature that we have is our faith mechanism, how we assume things are going to be, how we think, what we think is going to happen, and why we sort of expect things a certain way. It reminds me of a saying from the Holy Law that said something like, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay, there's more to that verse, but the thing is, it is true. There's this thing whereby we assume, or we have an expectation of how things are going to be. And it's in our thinking, and it has to do with anything we're thinking about. If we can guide that a certain way, you have discipline of the mind and mastery over how you're thinking and visualizing and imagining in your life. You have mastery over everything in your life. Because look, it's almost like I can think of this and this can be good. I can think of that and it can be vice versa. Yet if I can think of the right things, if I can sort of have discipline of the mind, you're on top of it all. It really is true. It's as if you're guiding your reality